and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm, and here to guide me through this hellacious week in the United States of America is
Chris Cooper, filling in for Ann Northrop.
Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
And you know, this week, Puerto Ricans certainly showed us how to remove a bigoted leader.
Harvey Milk Terminal opened at San Francisco Airport to honor one of our heroes.
That's great. Now, we want you to, be watching your screens midway through the show because we're going to show you some photos and ask, can you help solve the mystery of the 1957 gay wedding photos? Nobody knows who they are.
My future husband, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, dropped into a gay bar in Vancouver unannounced and made a big splash.
Well, but the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's cabinet includes 0 LGBT ministers.
A Florida man with HIV was sentenced to 10 years because he was deemed, quote, a danger to the community.
And a gay artist has set the record for the #1 song in the USA, I'm Gonna Ride Till I Can't No More.
Old Town Road by Lil Nas X.
All right, we're going to talk about all that. And by the way, I hope our free speech viewers understand we do have a new schedule from them. We premiere, these times are Eastern, on Fridays at 8 o'clock, and they repeat the show at midnight Eastern time. And then on Sundays, we're on at 7 a.m., 2 p.m. and 7 p.m., but you can always watch us online at www.gayusatv.org. What a week. I mean, what did I read about this week? Before we even get to Trump, I read about the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest under Bolsonaro that is accelerating, and the melting of the Greenland ice sheet accelerating. So I'm feeling vulnerable.
Don't be like my sister.
What does she say?
My sister gets on Facebook and posts, I've come to terms with just managing my extinction gracefully. And I'm like, well, no, you don't give up. You keep fighting.
We do. We're here. That's why we're here, and that's why you're watching, because you do want to fight and resist. But again, a very dispiriting week. I mean, look, Trump's been a racist from the get-go. He's been a racist forever.
Well, and he's not the first racist American president, not even in modern history.
12 of them owned slaves.
Modern history, the tape that just came out of Reagan and Nixon.
Right. So let's tell that story. Ronald Reagan, if you watch this show, was a monster who let HIV get out of control for 6 years before even talking about it. And now 35 million people are infected and 35 million have already died. Thank you, Ronald Reagan, monster. But this was in 1971, and the United Nations had just voted to let Red China, that's what they used to call the People's Republic of China, into the UN and to expel Taiwan. So Reagan is the governor of California.
And is talking to then President Nixon. And I believe the exact term was, those monkeys from the African countries voted him in.
Yes, and damn them.
And to which Nixon gives a hearty laugh.
Then he says, and they're still uncomfortable wearing shoes. Nixon gives out a hearty laugh over that. Right. Well, Nixon said terrible racist and anti-Semitic and homophobic things on those tapes. He was an awful, awful person.
So this is nothing new.
And we got rid of him.
Well, the racism is nothing new, but it's being deployed more forcefully than we've seen lately.
Look, I hate to have this new monster, affect mood. But it's dispiriting to live in this country, not just because of him, but to know that virtually no Republican will speak up to oppose him on any of this, and that he's got this 40% base that will never leave him. And in fact, this is why they like him.
Well, but I think it's also important for us to know this, because what it means is the poisons are rising to the surface. They're no longer what we're facing.
Can the genie ever be put back in the bottle?
I don't know if you want to put it back in the bottle. I
would like to suppress a lot of it, and people go back. People go back to being nice to each other, even if there's some crap underneath the system. People should know you should not express yourself this way.
True.
You hope that they're healed and that they have genuinely good feelings, but. And look, why is he going after Elijah Cummings? Because Elijah Cummings has put subpoenas out for Ivanka and Jared for their shenanigans. So a Quinnipiac poll says 51% of you think he's a racist, but 60% of you don't want impeachment.
But I have to wonder what the other 49% have been looking at that they don't see it.
Well, a lot of people who are racist don't like to think of themselves that way.
True.
Speaking for my own people, the white people, we all have to grapple with, internalized racism that we were, not that I would say I was brought up with, but that was just there in society and that we had to unlearn. It's not like I heard it at home. My parents would never tolerate that kind of thing. Anyway. What else did he do this week? He got rid of Dan Coates as the Director of National Intelligence, and he's trying to install this totally incompetent sycophant, Representative John Ratcliffe, who was most recently a small-town mayor in Texas and has no experience with intelligence.
We're being run as a banana republic.
And then this week we had, lest we forget what all this is sort of engendering in society, there was the Gilroy, California shooting by a kid, an avowed white supremacist, 19 years old, who decides to start killing people, some of whom were people of color at this thing. A 6-year-old kid, a 13-year-old girl, and this young man. When we taped last week, the Muller hearings had not finished. We had heard the morning in front of the House Judiciary Committee. Did you watch it with Adam Schiff?
I did watch it, yes.
And I thought that was better.
I don't know that it brought anything new to light, but I think the Democrats did a very good job of making their case and making their points, based on the report. So I thought that was effective. But the Republicans just kind of grandstand. I don't know that it changed shifted anyone's opinion.
Well, Jerry Nadler, who was head of our Congress, yours too?
No.
Congressman Jerry Nadler, who represents the west side of Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn, who's head of the House Judiciary Committee. He has basically let it be known he really wants to do an impeachment inquiry. And I think that's the only way they're going to get at this stuff. That's the reason for doing it. To me, it doesn't matter. Well, of course it matters, but it doesn't matter that the Senate is not going to convict him. This is a way of getting all the evidence out. And I don't mean just, whatever happened with Russia and the election. I mean everything, all the criminality of this administration. I think he should. I think he should be impeached just for what he did this week on race.
So while we're talking about ways to get rid of him, what is your takeaway from the Democratic debate, which at this time we've only seen the first half of the second debate?
We saw the first 10.
Yes, this was the white people edition.
I was going to say we saw the white group. There were how many people of color in the other one? 3 or more?
No, 4. There's Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Julian Castro, and Andrew Yang.
Oh, Andrew Yang as well. Right, 4. We've discussed this. It seemed to be a gang up of moderates who wanted to go after Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. And I think she had a great line, and it's been repeated again and again and again. Why would you want to run for president and tell us that you're not going to do something? You can't do anything about this.
Right.
I mean, we're here to change it. And look, we can all acknowledge how difficult it's going to be to move the country towards universal health care and Medicare for all. But I mean, what would these people have said about Medicare in the first place? Or Social Security in the first place?
I'll be much more judgmental than Andy, and I will give you my complete breakdowns. Elizabeth Warren won. Bernie Sanders came off as the angry old man yelling too much.
Okay.
Marianne Williamson was crazy, but crazy had its moment. She had one or two crowd-pleasing, crowd-rousing lines. Beto O'Rourke, I think, still comes off as not ready for prime time. He should run for the Senate. Buttigieg did pretty well. I'm still not on the Buttigieg bandwagon, but he did have his moments. He did pretty well. Who am I leaving out? Those are the rest, and the rest don't matter.
Well, I mean, Delaney and Bullock.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. So you never know. It's a funny year.
But, and all of that said, they could nominate a horse this year, and I will work my butt off to get that horse elected as the Democratic nominee.
I have said, I don't have a horse, and I have said that if it's Beavis and Butthead against Trump and Pence, I'm voting for Beavis and Butthead, and they're old enough now to be president, I think.
I don't know.
And then there's Trump's. I mean, we don't want to let these things slide. There's his nominee for the vice chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Air Force General John Hyten, accused of sexually assaulting our Army Colonel Catherine Spletsdoser, and she was there at the hearing. Now, he was cleared by the quote-unquote investigation, but she says it was a totally cursory thing, and but they have a penchant there for sexual harassers.
All right. Well,
and then, this is heartbreaking. They supposedly ended the policy of family separation.
Oh, right.
Since they ended the policy, 900 families have been separated from their children at the border.
Yeah. This has not been ended. It's just been buried.
And in the past year. And I watched the tape of Congressman Ted Lieu. I wish I could show it to you. And if you Google it, you can find it. This was at a hearing where he was grilling, this was a little bit ago, but he was grilling the guy from Border Patrol and everything. And he was saying, I want you to watch this film of a mother who was a citizen, separated from her child for 47 days because the kid was put into some detention center. He said, first of all, he said, do you have any evidence that this kid was a terrorist? And the guy goes, well, I don't have all the facts. Do you have any information that any 3-year-old is a terrorist? Let me put it that way. And he didn't say it well. He said it very quietly. And then he shows the film of the little boy being reunited with the mother. And the little boy is just wants to get away from his mother, doesn't want his mother to touch him, obviously felt abandoned and is going to feel this way for the rest of his life. And this is what we are doing to these kids at the border. I don't know. I mean, I watched the end of Years and Years, the HBO series, where people finally rebel against this kind of fascism and do something about it. We have to do something about it. It can't just be complaining about it.
I mean, that's where we can draw some inspiration maybe from Puerto Rico, where they got rid of Rosselló.
Rosselló? Okay.
They got rid of Rosselló, and it was huge mass street protests sustained that did it. Now, I have to confess, I've always been one to say street protests are good, but political action behind the scenes is better. But you and Ann were making a very strong case for sustained massive street protests.
Well, that's what they're doing in Hong Kong. I mean, they're getting the crap beat out of them now by the Chinese, but that's what they're doing. And when I say the Chinese, they're all Chinese, but I mean, I'm talking about, the pressure from mainland, well, I don't know what you call it at this point. It's all part of China.
Well, it worked in Puerto Rico. The question is what comes next down there. But the question is, could we ever pull something like that off here against Trump? And why
don't you think? I mean, certainly all the, millions of people turned out for the women's marches for the last 2 years, but we don't sustain it. And elections aren't going to fix this.
I think it would take some kind of trigger, and he's done so much already, and none of it has been sufficient trigger to generate that kind of sustained protest.
Yeah.
The most inspiring protest I've seen or heard about, I wasn't here, I was in California at the time, unfortunately, was when he first tried to institute the Muslim ban.
Yes.
And everyone spontaneously shut down
Went
JFK.
to the airports.
That was amazing. Wish I'd been here. But nothing else has acted like a trigger like that to get sustained protest. And I don't know.
And
what is
it? What is it in the American character that it's not like we don't fight. We had a civil war in this country.
We're complacent. We are anesthetized through television, through a plethora of cable channels, through video games.
But we do feel these things. Your sister feels these things. We do feel these things.
I think the vast majority of people are anesthetized. They're just.
Are you anesthetized out there, or do you want to do something? I'm looking for suggestions for people doing bigger things, not just bigger protests, but bigger fixes to our democracy. We're not much of a democracy. We have the Senate that's highly unrepresentative. We have these, all these government bodies that are unresponsive to us. I welcome your ideas. Write to us at the show and let us know. All right. And then, by the way, in terms of migrants, LGBT migrants now face the burden of proof of their identities when they're seeking asylum. They're asked things like, well, when did you realize you were gay? And how many sex partners have you had? They're asked these things. And it's all up to the individual judge to decide whether you've got an asylum claim. And if they're prejudiced, or don't like the idea, it's not going to happen. Good to see Governor Newsom in California passing that law that you got to turn in your taxes for the last 5 years if you want to get on the primary ballot. Do you think it will pass constitutional muster?
They'll probably keep it bottled up with legal challenges until it doesn't matter for the upcoming election.
Well, yes. I mean, he would have to turn them over by the end of this year to get on the primary ballot in California.
And they'll probably get a stay well before that. That'll allow him to stay on the ballot.
Right.
Even if he doesn't get on the ballot, he's not going to win California anyway. So.
Well, true, but the primary. I mean, don't forget, he will have a Republican opponent in many states, Bill Weld. That will be a repository for votes, and he's relatively pro-gay. He's the former governor of Massachusetts.
Sure.
He's gone back and forth on a couple of gay issues, but it's a repository for votes. And if people want to cast a protest vote against Trump, they're going to have the chance with Bill Weld. And yes, they say, 90% of Republicans support him, but independents and Democrats are allowed to vote in some primaries and cross over.
Is that true in California?
I don't know. How about that Betsy DeVos? Betsy, of course, she's the Secretary of Education. And the Center for American Progress has found that she's failing to protect LGBT students' civil rights.
They compared it to the Obama-era findings in various cases, and the current administration is coming up short in every measure.
Well, they won't investigate transgender at all anymore because they say, that's it,
well, no, they won't investigate transgender bathroom use. They say they will investigate transgender harassment, abuse, bullying.
Exactly.
That's what they say.
And gay, but and that's if you fail to conform to sex-based stereotypes. But the study says it's not happening,
right,
and that she is not doing his job. What are we paying these people for?
Well, some of the statistics: 54% more likely to investigate sexual orientation and gender identity complaints under the Obama administration. 54% more likely under Obama. When complaints were investigated, There was a 91.5% dismissal or close with no finding of wrongdoing in the DeVos administration, compared with 65.4% under Obama. So big differences in the percentages of how these cases were either dealt with at all or resolved.
You have a bully for president, and they support the bullies in the fight against it. Basically they hate children. Look what they're doing at the border. Look what they're doing in this case. It's awful.
They hate children until, like Jeffrey Epstein, they love them.
Yeah, I mean that has got to rub off on Trump, and that going with underage, people is the one thing that seems to be able to sink you in this country. That's what happened to Roy Moore, who was running again, but that's what sank him in Alabama and got a Democrat elected.
So you're saying that might be the trigger for Trump?
I think it's the kind of thing.
I will not predict anything as the trigger for Trump.
If they prove that he was having sex with Epstein's underage girls, I mean, you don't think that will
I think he'll just deny it.
What will Mother say?
He'll just say it's fake news. It's not true. He's got his.
No, but if they have him dead to rights, if they have evidence.
We've had him dead to rights and evidence on a bunch of other things.
So
and
what
he just says it's not true.
Going back to the race thing, I mean, we know that there are tapes of him behind the scenes at The Apprentice using the N-word. It's on tape. But the producer is a friend of his and will not really. Do you think if that came out, it would make any difference?
No.
It would not make any difference?
No, not to his supporters.
Well. I did read a story that says that with the changing demographics, that 90% of the increase in the American population is among people of color. 90% of the increase in population.
Sure.
And so that the 2020...
This is part of the demographic that's going to change America into a majority country. So.
But the 2020 election the electorate will be different from the 2016 electorate. And Hillary got obviously just under the number of white people that she needed.
Yeah, but the question is where the demographic change occurs, because you got to remember it's by the Electoral College and by state.
But it's all over.
Well, I mean, and for example, it's helping us in Texas, turning Texas purple.
I mean, the one point that Beto O'Rourke made in the debate was, I'm beating Trump in Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, that's encouraging. Trump was at the 400th anniversary of Jamestown, which was the first white settlement in America down there in Virginia, and he spoke. Many African-American lawmakers boycotted the event, but Delegate Ibrahim Samreth stood up with a sign that said, we got a picture of this, put it up, that said, "Deport hate, reunite my family, and go back to your corrupted home." Now, of course, we don't want him to come back to his corrupted home, because that means Trump Tower in New York, and we don't want him. By the way, the transgender delegate that was elected down there, Donica Rome, she attended this thing. And she said she wanted to promote a narrative of inclusion. Well, you could have stood with your brother there who was protesting. That would have been nice as well.
Well, meanwhile, in better, happier news, in San Francisco, they finally opened Terminal 1, renamed for Harvey Milk.
Yeah.
That's at San Francisco International Airport.
Got a picture of it there.
There it is.
Now, they wanted to name the whole airport for him
a
couple of years ago, but that didn't go anywhere. They thought it was going to be an easy lift, but he's getting a terminal and an art. There's a big art exhibit there about Harvey Milk that's in the terminal. And it's all being refurbished and everything. So that's great.
Excellent, and just in time for 50th of Stonewall, or just after.
All right. What else? Another thing in the Trump administration is what they're doing, separating people with HIV from their families at the border. And this was acknowledged at a hearing, and now they're trying to walk it back, but it hasn't stopped.
It was for their own safety, quote unquote, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was the justification.
Yeah, well, no, but they said it's a communicable disease, so we have to do this.
Right,
and
exactly.
This is ridiculous.
Exactly.
And by the way, Utah wanted to expand Medicaid, to help their people. And the Trump administration said no, that you can't. They wanted to make it a more generous program.
Lovely.
All right. Okay, but the U.S. House did do something good this week. I mean, you don't read too much about these things because they're one-house bills, but this passed overwhelmingly something called the Pride Act to give same-sex couples a refund on taxes when inequality was built into the system before, in the days of DOMA, when our marriages weren't recognized. And an estimated $67 million in taxes was taken out that shouldn't have been taken out. I hope those of you who benefit from this will consider giving back to the movement that won it for all of us.
Well, while we're talking about Congress, there's a Republican in Virginia's 5th District who officiated at the same-sex wedding of some friends of his.
A very conservative gay couple.
Yes, I know.
Campaign workers.
I actually wanted to say to them, what are you doing? Why are you working for these people? But that's not the point of the story. No. The point of the story is that the Virginia GOP tried to censure this guy, Representative Denver Riggleman, for having officiated a same-sex marriage because it goes against the Republican National Platform. They were not successful, and a couple of people, I know, shocking, a couple of people in the Republican Party held this up as proof of how inclusive they are.
Oh, come on.
I said, well, thank you for the proper response.
They said the motion was out of order.
Yeah, that's how they killed it.
Well, basically. Yeah. All right. We told you about, in New York, the death of a transgender inmate in Rikers Island, Layleen Polcano, 27 years old. We do have a picture, who died on June 7th in Rikers Island. An autopsy has revealed that what happened is she had an epileptic seizure and she was in isolation. She was in segregated, punitive segregation. And the doctor should not have allowed her to be assigned to a cell in segregation because of her medical condition. She'd already spent time in the infirmary, and she died there because she couldn't raise $500 bail. By the way, I've told you about the Abel Cedeno case. I'm not going to go into all the details now. This is the kid in the Bronx, bullied gay teen. He was convicted of manslaughter and assault in this fight that he had in the classroom with a knife. But we are trying for youthful offender status for him. And we're asking people to sign a petition to go to the judge. So
you say we, who is the we?
Well, I mean, those of us who think that he deserves that. I mean, I think he was defending himself in this case. The judge didn't think so. The judge did not buy a defense of self-defense, of justification. He brought a knife to school. You're not supposed to have a knife in school, but he was charged by two guys, who jumped from the back of the room to the front. Even when seeing the knife, still charged him. And at that, if he was in Florida and you had a stand your ground law, I mean, he could have done anything. I'm not saying.
Well, not if he's black.
Well, he was Latino. The victims in this case were African American, but it was a fight, and he was look, he had no experience carrying a knife. He didn't know what to do with it, so he just went like this, and they ended up killing one kid, and the other kid got sliced up. I mean, if he knew how to use a knife, he would have probably disabled the guy or whatever.
So a bunch of activists are looking to get him youthful offender status.
Well, I mean, he was 18. He has no criminal record. I don't think he's a threat to anyone. But you can read about the case and decide. I've written about it extensively in the Gay City News. And if you get our emails, if you go to gayusatv.org and you sign up for our emails, I'll give you the link to this petition to the judge.
Meanwhile, also here in New York, a pair of trans filmmakers were on a street corner in Queens filming something against violence against trans people, and as they were filming, they were assaulted. One of the people in the assault was captured on the scene immediately. That was the woman in the assault. And the man in the assault just turned himself in, a man named David Gonzalez, 34. The two Latinas who were filming, trans Latinas, are Norma Urero and Biani Garcia. So
and they were making a film about trans women.
Exactly, and about violence against trans women and police harassment against trans women.
Wow.
And it happened while they were making it. But fortunately, the perpetrators have been caught. There were attacked in that they were sprayed with what they believe was pepper spray.
This isn't criminal activity, but it's a pretty hairy story. There's something in New York called the Center for HIV Educational Studies and Training at the City University of New York, or CHEST. That's what it stands for. And the guy who ran it, Professor Jeffrey Parsons, the director, was investigated for sexual. He's there on the right, and he's there with his husband, and more about him later. He is now resigned after an investigation that cost $500,000 that substantiated extensive complaints of sexual harassment of employees and pushing alcohol on them or trying to get them to use alcohol. And he used illegal drugs. I mean, the guy was making $363,000 a year. He was the 5th highest paid guy in the whole CUNY system. And the other guy, he hired his husband, Chris Heitiko, for $600,000 worth of taking photographs for his projects. So
it sounds like a Trump move.
Well, it's bad. It's bad, and we report it, when we do it as well.
All right, shifting gears completely.
Yes.
Bisexuality is rising amongst black women.
Yes.
It's fascinating.
What is going on?
That's a very good question. But 23% of black women ages 18 to 34 now identify as bisexual.
Say that again.
23%, almost 1 in 4 black women in the 18 to 34 age group identify as bisexual.
And that's 3 times as many of those women as just 10 years ago. So what happened in the last 10 years?
Excellent question. You would
Is it Janelle Monáe? What is it? What is it? Come on.
Well, one theory was, incarceration rates of black men.
But that's been high forever.
Exactly. That has not increased over the last 10 years, and they've seen this number spike over a 10-year period. So they're really a little bit at a loss as to explain what's going on. Maybe it's a matter of identification rather than an actual change.
Because of the success of the movement, and it's penetrating to all levels of society and everything.
But what's interesting is that it is particularly high amongst black women more than white women.
Well, yes, the overall rate of identification of LGBT people has not changed much in the last
and to the extent it has changed, it's because of this group.
Yes.
It's like they're skewing our numbers in a good way.
Well, but you also read about young people around the world, especially high school students. It's almost like half don't identify as completely straight.
Right. The young are very interesting.
Well, that's all.
They're not like us.
Well, but they still don't like it in the Catholic Church. We've told you, Indianapolis seems to be the hotbed of firing gay people from school. So we told you a while ago about the gay guidance counselor at Roncalli High School.
Well, which one? There's 2.
You remember who Roncalli was?
No.
That was Pope John the 23rd from when I was a kid. Anyway, his name was Roncalli. I don't know why why don't they call it John the 23rd High School? Anyway, this teacher, Lynn Starkey, is suing for getting fired for her sexual orientation. She had worked there for 40 years, and she filed a complaint with the federal EEOC, which does take such complaints.
Well, the question is whether the federal EEOC will continue to advocate on our side. The reason why she got called out all of a sudden after 40 years is because she married her partner, and a parishioner brought that notice of a marriage to the local priest, and then that set off the chain of events. Now, she is the second guidance counselor in this Roncalli High School to face the same problem. Shelley Fitzgerald is the other one. And she is also planning to sue. And then in Indianapolis, there's also 2 gay men. They're married to each other, but they both worked in the Indianapolis Catholic high school system.
Well, one worked for a diocesan school. He was fired, and then he couldn't get his job back. The other one they kept at a Jesuit high school.
Right, they refused to fire him, and then therefore the high school got decommissioned as a Catholic institution.
They're not Catholic anymore. They're just Jesuit. All right, so Puerto Rico. Oh, by the way, in California, Governor Newsom also signed a bill that extends domestic partnerships to non-gay couples. Now,
No.
a lot of places got rid of that.
Sure.
Once we had same-sex marriage. New York has not. And I think it's like 70% of the domestic partners in the city of New York are non-gay.
Well, those of you who may be considering domestic partnership, keep in mind that federal tax law does not look kindly on it relative to marriage, where your benefits are not taxed if you're married, if you're getting health benefits for your married partner. Domestic partnership benefits are taxed if you get them for your partner. So
that's right.
Keep that in mind.
I will keep that in mind. I used to have a domestic partner, and
well, we're in California. Los Angeles is now the largest city to include LGBTQ business contracts or businesses in their contracting system. In other words, there's a procurement system where there's some special consideration sometimes given to minority-owned businesses, for either owned by women
and they're the first.
or owned by minorities. They're not the first, but they're the largest now.
Oh.
They're the largest municipality to do it. Now that may change.
Does that mean we don't do it in New York?
We don't do it in New York. We do not include LGBT-owned businesses now, but we are maybe moving towards that, as may Chicago, which would knock Los Angeles off.
And they have a lesbian mayor. And we have a gay speaker of the council.
We do. Other municipalities that do the same thing include Orlando, Nashville, Baltimore, Seattle, Columbus, Ohio, Philadelphia, and Newark and Hoboken, New Jersey.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay. Are you ready for some? You have some other national news?
No,
go ahead.
No. Well, Philadelphia, they are getting rid of 13 police officers who posted on Facebook their violent thoughts coupled with racist and homophobic statements.
Very hard to get rid of misbehaving police officers. What did they say?
Can I speak freely for a second?
Yes, always. In fact, some of this is going out on free speech TV.
I get very frustrated when I see on the news all the hand wringing and the hand waving about people splashing cops with water, which is apparently this thing that's going on now a little bit in New York. It's not rampant.
And they've made it into a high crime and misdemeanor.
They're like determined to catch these people and round them up and lock them up for splashing cops with water. Meanwhile, a cop who used an illegal chokehold to choke a black man to death, where it was caught on camera, is still working on the police force and getting a paycheck, in fact, more money than he ever made before.
And Mayor de Blasio can't seem to bring himself to, fire the guy.
But the real problem is cops being splashed with water. Anyway, yes, these cops are going. All 13 of these police officers in Philadelphia.
All right. What about now? Let's talk about the couple that got married in 1957.
Oh, this is an interesting
Get that
story.
picture up and leave it up.
This is an
we want you to pay attention to this photo.
So take a good look and see if you can identify these men, because
It looks like Victor Mature. I've seen the other guy from another angle, and he looks like Ethan Hawke. But it can't be. It's 1957. They'd be in their 80s or 90s. But what happened?
Well, so in 1957, they apparently had a same-sex secret wedding.
In Philadelphia. You say a secret wedding? There were a lot of people at this party.
Well, but they had the blinds drawn.
Did they?
Yes, so that people couldn't see.
But why do we have these photos?
Because they were dropped off to be developed at this North Philly area photo mat. Drugstore. And the person running it said, "These are indecent. I will not develop. I'm confiscating them. I will not develop them."
Homosexuality in 1957. It's during the whole Lavender Scare
So
era.
why did they resurface? Because this same drugstore had this policy of never getting rid of any photos, and that any photos that were confiscated, employees could do whatever they wanted with.
Wait a minute. I think it's my father. Well, I mean, seriously, that's not my father, but I don't think. But here's the thing. Somebody could see these pictures and say, that was my father, because in those days, gay men and lesbians mostly married people of the other sex, whatever else they did behind the scenes, secretly. Now, certainly people led gay lives, had gay partners, had committed relationships, but somebody may find out that a parent or an uncle or whatever was this gay person.
Well, so now more than 60 years later, they're trying to figure out who these two men are.
They'd be in their 80s or 90s, yeah.
And the people doing it are filmmakers, 3 filmmakers, I think 2 producers and a writer, and they may actually make a documentary about the search for who these guys are and what it reveals about our history.
Right.
So.
It's a well.
If you saw them and recognize them or think you have a lead, hey, email Andy and tell him. He'll pass it on.
Grandpa, are you sitting down? I think I have your wedding photos. All right. Are we ready for some international news?
We better. We got a lot of international news.
Okay.
All right. So you may have heard about Poland and Białystok. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing any of this Polish stuff correctly, so please forgive me if I'm
Białystok,
not.
that's a character in that.
Well, then it must be right, if that's how you pronounce it. But anyway,
Max Białystok.
in Białystok, Poland, they tried to have a gay pride parade. About a couple of hundred people showed up. They were met by thousands of right-wing counter-protesters of all ages, including families gathered who threw fireworks, brick stones, rotting fruit from balconies. The cops came and had to tear gas everyone to try to break up the violence.
But they've been revved up by the bigoted Catholic Church of Poland, and they've been revved up by the government, which is trying to hold on to power
and is
by
using us as the boogeyman.
Right.
Exactly.
But they did arrest 30 people there, and then there was a demonstration in Warsaw of 1,000 people.
And one also, I think, in Białystok of a couple of hundred people, expressing their support for the gay community.
Brendan Fay was over there, the New York
was he really?
Irish gay activist. He has this relationship with Poland going way back.
Wow.
All right. But in better news, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stopped for a beer at the Fountainhead Pub. Got a picture of this? Put it up there. It's a gay bar. He did this on Monday when they were kicking off Gay Pride Week. Why is this news? Because it's the first time, apparently, that a prime minister,
a sitting prime minister,
has gone to a gay bar. In New York, we used to take politicians around to the gay bars when they were running for office, and that's the way they could meet the gay constituency. And once I was taking around a guy named Judge Bruce Wright. You've heard of Keith Wright, but this was his father. He was a famous judge. Turn him loose, Bruce, they used to call him. He was a fantastic guy. You don't know Bruce Wright? Mm-hmm. And but when we brought him into the bars and we said, we'd like you to meet the judge, gay people panicked, like they were going to get locked up or something. And then we're walking along the street with these Gays for Bruce Wright flyers, and these women go, well, we're straight. What are we supposed to do? And he said, in that case, you should vote a straight Democratic ticket. He was very clever. He was a poet as well. So Justin Trudeau, but in other Canadian news, did you read about this? The Vancouver Pride Society won't permit the Vancouver Public Library to march in the Pride Parade because it allowed a speaker that this group called transphobic and anti-sex worker Megan Murphy to book space for an event there. So the Coalition Against Trans Antagonism demanded a new rental policy at the library, and they weren't satisfied with what the library came up with. They cited the British Columbia Human Rights law code that says public institutions have a moral obligation to protect people from discriminatory speech. We have a First Amendment in this country. I'm not fond of this Megan Murphy character, but...
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Center, when the Center kicked out some pro-Palestinian group.
Queers Against Israeli Apartheid.
And at the insistence of some major donors. And, this cuts both ways. Right. I don't know that this is the route you want to go.
We have been, we have been the victims of this. Look, we're going to talk later about a rock group in Lebanon that can't perform because they're gay. I mean, we would like a certain amount of freedom and exchange of ideas and all that kind of thing, and meet speech with more speech.
Our ideas,
This is not beliefs, a defense of transphobia.
No, but our ideas and beliefs are not so fragile or delicate that we can't defend them in the public square and win. If you're done with Canada, we can go over to the UK, where Boris Johnson is now Prime Minister. Yes. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
He's a character, that's for sure. They've been saying he's Trumpian and sort of cut from the same flamboyant cloth. But what he's done is he's appointed a cabinet full of questionable at best individuals who have a history of not supporting our community.
They do. And there's just no gay ministers in the cabinet.
Right, where there used to be some. So some of the people he has appointed, Gavin Williamson, Education Secretary, who twice voted against same-sex marriage. Another one, Andrea Ledson, who also voted against same-sex marriage and was against children being exposed to information about gay relationships.
And 6% of the Tory party in Parliament is gay. So they had plenty to choose from.
So yeah, that's just a sample of some of the cabinet ministers he's appointed. So Boris is not off to a good start from our perspective. He himself, as your close personal friend and guest supporter of the show, Peter Tatchell, has described as a checkered past on our issues.
Indeed.
Peter Tatchell's big gay activist over there in the UK.
And by the way, we're losing a major news outlet over there, Gay Star News. It's a major media site out of the United Kingdom. And they just shuttered this week after 8 years. They were unable to turn a profit. They blamed the uncertainty of Brexit, meaning a lot of UK businesses are not investing in advertising and things like that because they don't know what their future is going to be. They are going to keep their archive online. It was a helpful source for this show, but so Gay Star News is no more.
Well, staying in the UK, but crossing over to the Irish island. In Northern Ireland, it looks like they are finally, one way or another, getting same-sex marriage. Now, Northern Ireland, of course, is the only part of the United Kingdom that currently does not have same-sex marriage.
And you can thank Sinn Féin for that.
Exactly.
Sinn Féin is the party, used to be considered the party of the IRA. But Sinn Féin said, we are not going to enter into an agreement to form they don't have a Northern Ireland Assembly.
Correct, and because they don't have a Northern Ireland Assembly, the UK Parliament is in charge of making the laws. And they have said, okay, then there's going to be same-sex marriage. And the only way you're not going to have same-sex marriage now in Northern Ireland is if you form a government.
Yes.
So by Sinn Féin saying, we're not forming a government unless it explicitly includes same-sex marriage, it means that same-sex marriage in Northern Ireland is now a done deal.
On the other hand, going back to Boris Johnson, he's basically saying, I don't care about preserving the open border, with Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and if we have to leave and shut it for that, that's fine. I mean, this is an undermining of the peace agreement. He could easily bring sectarian violence back to Northern Ireland through what he's doing.
Well, do you think Scotland will stay?
I would think with Boris Johnson at the helm of the United Kingdom at this point, I think that would be enough reason for them to leave. They had one vote. Boris Johnson says he doesn't want to give them another vote. And I will just ask our director when he gets a chance to give me the timing on how much we have left. I would appreciate that. Going back to London, we told you about that young lesbian couple that was beat up by a bunch of kids.
Yes.
They don't name the kids, but they were all ages 15 to 17, and they're charged with aggravated assault as a hate crime. The boys had demanded that they kiss, and then but these women went public with the picture of themselves bloodied on the bus as they were coming home.
Well, it's good that they caught them. That's excellent. Yes. Meanwhile, in Russia...
I'm sorry, say that again? 10 minutes to go. Okay, thank you.
Meanwhile, in Russia, they caught another murderer. This is the guy who murdered the Russian activist.
Yeah.
Now they're saying, mind you, this is the Russian police, so take it with a grain of salt. They're saying it was a domestic dispute, that the two of them knew each other and that they were fighting, seen fighting, and that the man stabbed her 8 times. The woman who was stabbed, Elena Grigorieva, was 41.
But she had been put on a website of people to be targeted.
Exactly, which is why it's of concern and why one raises one's eyebrow a little bit at the report of the Moscow police.
Right.
That this was not.
Well, we will try to stay on top of it and follow it up. In a lesser degree of homophobia, but homophobia nonetheless. Nivea hand cream, right? It's a German
From your
company.
Fingers to your toes.
They parted ways with their ad agency, which they called FCB, after a 100-year relationship because the client rejected an image of two men touching hands. And somebody from Nivea said, "Oh, we don't do gay here at Nivea." So Nivea's denying it, that it was said, but.
Well, there goes that.
And they said these allegations do not reflect our values.
If they've had them for 100 years, it must be the ad company that came up with your fingers to your toes. You've got just one set of permanent clothes.
We told you that the U.S. National Security Panel wanted China to get rid of Grindr. They wanted Grindr to come back because they're worried about security concerns.
Sure,
but they've lifted that.
Yeah, they've backed down, and so now they're the Kunlun, the Chinese owners of Grindr, are looking to put it up for sale. Yeah.
All right.
Meanwhile, there's some question whether Germany is really safe for LGBTQ travelers. The Berlin travel guide Spartacus, which used to be very well known, I don't know in this internet era how much people use it these days, but they've downgraded Germany as a destination for LGBTQ travelers because of violence. 382 attacks on queer people in 2018, 58 more than in the previous year. Of course, that still is a better than in the United States because they have guaranteed national protections that we don't have here in the States.
Even Kenya does things the United States doesn't do. Their census is going to include male, female, and intersex citizens. It's the first country in Africa to collect such data.
That's huge in Africa.
It is. South Africa includes intersex people in their anti-discrimination law. But,
right.
And Hong Kong, despite all the trouble, same-sex couples are now entitled to joint tax assessment.
It's time to hopscotch some islands.
Okay.
Island hopping.
All right.
We'll begin in Bermuda, where a gentleman named Tony Brannan has set up Crowd Justice. It's a campaign to crowdfund to raise money to finance the fight in Bermuda to keep same-sex marriage. Now, to recap a little bit in Bermuda, their high court said you must have same-sex marriage. Then the government pushed through a law that said no civil partnerships. Then the court said, actually, the parts that said
a higher court
said that
the higher above the high court.
They said that no, actually, the parts that got rid of same-sex marriage are illegal. The government appealed. They put a stay on that. So it's been back and forth in Bermuda.
Now it goes to the Privy Council
in the UK.
I feel like I'm in an Elizabethan drama.
But one of the most disheartening things about Bermuda is one of the few cases, the other being California, where a government rescinded same-sex marriage after it had already been in effect.
Staying in the islands, Jamaica is being sued for marriage equality under that Inter-American Council on Human Rights ruling.
And same thing in Barbados, where a trans woman, Alexa Hoffman, has challenged Sections 9 and 12 of the Sexual Offenses Act under the IACHR, the Inter-American
St.
Commission
Vincent and the Grenadines are being sued over their ban on gay sex, no less marriage.
Following on the heels of Jason Jones' successful challenge in Trinidad and Tobago, my ancestral homeland, and a similar challenge filed in Dominica. So the Caribbean, slowly but surely, is being dragged into the rest of the modern day with the rest of the Americas.
And we thought Lebanon was a relative oasis in the Middle East. It's the home country of the rock band Mashru Leila, fronted by the out gay Hamed Sino. There's a picture of them. But their August 9th concert in Lebanon has been in a coastal town called Byblos. They performed there 11 times, but there was a lot of pressure from so-called Christian groups and a threat of violence, and the government is refusing to protect them. And they've been banned, of course, in Egypt and other places, but not in their hometown.
Back in the Americas, in the Yucatan, Mexico, they are still fighting that. It's almost like block-to-block battle for same-sex marriage in Mexico, where it's state-to-state, block-to-block. They're going to force in Yucatan a gay marriage vote for a third time.
So it's a perilous world, and Tinder has a new security feature that's going to help you protect LGBT users who travel to countries that criminalize same-sex acts. And it's going to, it'll hide your location if you want to, so you're less vulnerable. It won't
I think it takes down your profile automatically or something unless you override it.
Tinder says they're going to protect you.
In Taiwan, did we talk about how boys can wear skirts now in Taiwan's gender-neutral school uniform policy?
Well, this is at Bangkeo Senior High School, and they had a whole week where male teachers and male students wore skirts to blast gender stereotypes.
Terrific.
All right. In Japan, the Federation of Bar Associations is demanding that they bring in marriage equality immediately.
And in India, they are hesitating, or they have deferred action on the nomination of an openly gay judge to their collegium. So yes, they've legalized same-sex marriage, decriminalized, I misspoke. They have decriminalized homosexuality. They have not legalized same-sex marriage. But they're not sure if they're ready for an openly gay judge.
And they have 31 judges on their high court. Caster Semenya, you've read about the runner, the woman runner, once again ordered to lower her testosterone levels artificially if she wants to compete with other women.
Meanwhile, if I can find it, there is a New Zealand weightlifter. Here she is, Laurel Hubbard, who is causing quite a stir even now, weeks after her competition and her win. Trans woman competing in weightlifting with other women. And I have to be absolutely honest, I'm not sure how I feel about this.
Well, you have to think about it.
Yeah, there's got to be a way to make this fair and still be inclusive of everyone. But if you were, as someone who works out, if you were a man and then you transition, you're still going to have physiological advantages as a former man in the competition over any woman you compete against.
And yet, there was the trans man, right, who was a wrestler who had been a girl, but was forced by their high school to compete with other girls and was beating all of them because he lived as a boy now. So where do we go with all this?
Yeah.
All right.
Sports is a thorny issue when it comes to trans.
Couple of AIDS notes. By the way, they did a study on the states that have refused to expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. As a result, 15,600 people died who would not have died between 2014 and 2017. And it's a disgraceful partisan issue. Governor Cuomo signed a bill to decriminalize marijuana possession. Much lower penalties. Entertainment news. We have
we're almost running out of time. Do we have
1
any
minute.
AIDS time? Well, most important of all is we talk about Lil Nas X,
yes,
who has now been at the top of Billboard's 100 chart, Hot 100 chart, for 17 consecutive weeks, a new all-time record that is fantabulous, that the gays have taken the record.
And it's all because he came out.
No, it was huge before he came out. He did the song Old Town Road. That's very catchy, and it's been covered by like dozens of people.
It's still on the list.
And it's fantastic, and go Lil Nas X.
Penny Arcade, the performance artist, is last 4 shows of her show Longing Lasts Longer is going to be at Joe's Pub, where it originated, August 6, 13, 20, and 27, consecutive Tuesdays. She's done it in 200 cities, and 200 times in 44 cities. And Hannah Gadsby is off Broadway right now at the Darrell Raw Theatre, the Australian comic, with her show Douglas, where Ann and I are going to go see it. And what else do we have? They've canceled Will and Grace, but they're going to have one more season on the air. And that's all the time we have.
I think it is.
Thanks for being with us, and I'll be back next week.
And Ann will be back next week.
No,
she won't.
my co-host will be Allison Kahn.